Hey guys, it's watercolor day. Not only is it watercolor day, it's watercolor face day and watercolor pretty girl face day, which means it's going to be a pain in the butt because pretty girls, pretty people, young people are kind of a challenge when it comes to working with faces and doing portraits. So I'm going to be working with a limited color palette again. I'm going to be working with my CMYK color palette, so I'm going to be mixing all my colors myself, so I'm not relying on any pre-mixed colors. And we'll just see how that goes, and it might even give me a little more of a limited color palette to work with, in that I got enough other things to worry about with just trying to get this face to look good, let alone worrying about a range of colors. So that's the plan on this little piece right here. Another thing I'm doing on this one is, it's a trick I used quite a bit a long time ago, and it kind of relates back to when I was working with a lot of antique photos. They're all black and white, so I had to kind of invent my own color palette. So one of the best things you can do if you're having difficulty with colors, working from color reference, color photographs like that, just convert them to grayscale, Xerox them, whatever. Just knock out the color and use your own color choices, your own color palette based upon your color theory. So that's what we're going to do here. I've got this black and white image of this young lady right here. I'm imagining she's got a lot of freckles, so I'm imagining she's probably a redhead. So that's kind of how I'll go in and approach this, and we'll see how this goes. So let's get started. Hopefully it's a down and dirty. All right, so here's my color palette. Nice cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. I got my white as well in case I need to add in some highlights on the back end of this. So, all right, I am really going to just kind of go crazy with my initial colors. I'm going to keep them very light, and we'll just see where this goes. All right. And I am not going to be too fussy about, I'm looking and making decisions right now. This is all a mental thing right now. So kind of pinkish orange right there is going to be a nice range of colors. And I'm just going to slap in the colors in a real random manner. I don't care. I think this will allow me to get a little more expressive, and I'm kind of breaking out of my whole, I'm trying to get out of my head here color wise. So I've already done a couple pretty girl paintings already, and they were meh. That's about what they were, just kind of meh. So I'm just going to throw in colors and get my base color right off the bat, just about like this. And I don't care, it's just going to be runny and all sorts of fun stuff all over. So let me get a little more yellow up here. So it's a very wet on wet application of the base colors. So I've got it color blocked. Now it needs to dry before I can really start doing a whole lot. I'm going to try to get started back on it. I'm working with a Canson paper. It's fast paper, so it should dry fairly quick. But before it totally dries, I'm going to try to come in and drop in some of the value ranges and color ranges on the face, the modeling on the face. The side of the noses, the side of the nose, the side of the face, maybe some lips and things like that. So, all right, so it's pretty dribbly right now. So very faint, very soft. I didn't want a real heavy hand on it. So, and while that's drying right now, got a nice base color on it. I'm going to grab this larger round. I'm just going to wet it. Make sure it's halfway clean. I've done that before. So go to pick out some colors, and my brush has some remnant colors in it because I was too lazy to clean it out, right? So there's some real hot spots right on the face, right in here. And where I'm lifting these colors out, it's going to kind of come back in and soften back up. This side of the face is lighter, so I'm just going to pick out some of the highlights down here on the face. It's very wet, so those colors are lifting really nicely. Right up here on the brow, right up here by the hairline. It's really wet. It filled right in. So let's see here. There's a little dab. This whole arm right here, it's going to be lifted out. We'll just pull that down. I'm going to try to make this quick too. I don't want this to be an hour-long tutorial, so we'll just try to do this as fast as we can and wrap it up. Okay, and this shoulder right here and right in here and right in through here. We're just creating a nice little highlight profile that we can work with. That nose right there is very bright, right along through here, right on the tip of the brow, the nose ball of the nose. There we go. This side right over here. All right, so that's drying nicely. I'm going to get a little more of an orange, a little thicker too, and come on, a little thicker. There we go. And I'm going to just drop in just a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to drop in that color right here in the hair. Okay, and it can be soft, it can be fuzzy. We can worry about all of the specifics in just a minute, but I just need to get some color down here into the hair as a base color. It's got a nice soft fuzz over here on the side. There we go. Good. All right, so we got some of the hair established. We'll go back to a little more of a pink. And it's starting to dry, so I better hurry. I'm going to go ahead and block in some more of that blush on the face, on this shadow side. Down here on the shadows here. Right in through here. Good. I'm going to feather that just a little bit. That looks good. This chin, lip, let's get the lips. Throw a lot of pigment here, right down here along the lower portion of the chin, over here right under the lip. Shadow under the nose, under the eye over here, this whole shadow under inside the eye socket, same thing over here, and even over here, this whole side of the face. Cool. Soften that up a little bit. There we go. Yeah, that's starting to look nice. I'll throw a little bit of it right over here on that shoulder. Still nice and wet right there. All right. Working with harmonious colors right now, so nothing I do is going to create a big mess. I'm going to throw a little bit right there on the cheek. Oops, I need to feather that out. That's a little too much and it's a little too dry right there, so we'll just activate it again. There we go. Let's get the magenta, that pinker feel. So again, it's real similar to the guy's face I did a couple weeks ago, where I start out with yellow ochres up here, reds, and then blues. We'll do a similar thing, just not so oriented around the beard line. Let's see, I was doing the cheek right here. So we're going to throw a little bit of that color right up there against the nose. right on that cheek. Same thing on this side of the nose. Throw that in there. It's still very damp, so the colors are really migrating all over the place. And that's okay. I'm going to throw a little more down here, right in there, before it totally dries. And I'm going to get a little more magenta, a little more of that red. Okay. I'm going to get that cheek, that whole plane of the face right here. That's pretty dark, right in through there. Under the lips, intensify the lips a little more, that chin. It's going to dry lighter, so I'm resisting the urge to fuss with it too much more. Alright, I think I'm going to need to let this dry just a little bit. I got a good base color on everything, and I might introduce some cyan in here, and we'll start getting a little more of a purple feel to it. There we go. Just for a little more density. I'll throw some of that right up in here. There we go. Right in through this area here. Right here on the cheek. Right under the nose. Right here on the chin. And we'll do the definition in just a few minutes. There on the eyebrow. Alright. Let's go ahead and throw a little more of it over here on the hair. Just a little more color complexity. A little more of that orange. Alright. And it goes lighter on that side of the face, so, or the hair. So we'll just leave that alone. I'm going to soften that out right here. Alright. Alright. I am going to let that dry just a little bit. Actually, before I do, I just saw something. I got a flat, and I'm just going to, it's actually lighter right in through here. I'm just going to lift that out just a little bit, right in through here, right under that lip right there. And recapture this shape right here. There we go. And right in here, I'm going to do a little picking. Good. Right there on the nose. And right there on the nose. And right on the peak of the nose, right there. Good. Kind of lighten all of that up. A little bit of a lighter area right up there. And right there. I want to get a little bit of the white of the eye picked out. And I didn't get a lot of it over there, so that's good. Get a little more of this picked, lightening that stroke. I don't want to see that stroke. That's good. And right here. Good. Alright, so that is just going to dry for a few minutes, and then I'll come back in, we'll start intensifying saturation, finding some of the bigger shapes, intensifying the hair, and really start developing the structure on the eyes, the nose, the lips, and then we'll start doing some additional glazes to bring that color up. Do something in the background, make it pop a little more, and we should be done. So hang on. Okay, it has dried enough. It's still a little damp right over in this area on the right side of her. Well, it's her left side of the hair. It's kind of a big wet spot right there. I do need to pick a little spot up here on the hairline where the watercolor has kind of run a little bit. I need to kind of rescue that little angle and that edge right there without getting too heavy-handed with it, and maybe throw a little bit of it into the shape. And I'm trying not to pick too much because this Canson paper is kind of delicate. It's not as tough as the more expensive papers and the slower papers. So all right, now I'm going to mix up. I'm going to come in and I'm really going to go after some of the really dark darks on the eyes, the nose, the lips, and add a little bit of the definition. So I'm mixing up a nice thick cream color, dark. I'm mixing in some black, some red, and just getting a nice, rich, deep contrast to paint with. So I'm going to go after the lips, separation on the lip, upper lip, lower lip, the nostrils, and mostly the upper eye and the pupils. So we shall get started then. It's voiceover Rusty jumping in now as I get started painting on the upper and lower lip separation line. I'm going to speed up the video and get started defining shapes and edges where there are, painting in the eyes, the structure of the eyes, the darkness, all of that nice saturation. It's a thick mixture of your red and black, yellow, heck, all three colors. Working on the eyebrows, kind of a dark red. Working around, starting to structure up some of the locks of hair with a dark red. Blocking in some of the shadows on the face. That right side is a shadow side, so I'm going to work in some purples, some of those violets, build a little more structure, a little more color complexity to it. Looking for those shadows, also painting some edges, checking for a wet spot there. All right, and big areas of color. So really just finding the saturation and glazing in the colors where they need to be. Throwing in that red on the lips, in and around the lower portion of the chin, and then really coming in again with that really dark red and building the locks of hair, the directional marks, loosening it up, keeping it soft and feathery where it should be, and sharp and defined in the other areas. Picking out some highlights, and then mixing up some green, going to drop it in onto the eye. Try to get a little bit of that green going, and now I'm going to glaze some warm red oranges into the flesh tone. Just warm up the face. She's looking a little cold. All right, so we have a little more saturation throughout the whole thing. I'm going to let this dry for a few minutes, and I'm going to come after her for the detail and contrast for the next stage. So hang on, give me a minute. All right, it has dried somewhat. I can feel quite a bit of moisture in it, but I want to go ahead and get started. And I've seen a couple things that I need to fix. And mainly in this eye here is not as wide open as the others, so I'm just going to kind of come in, pick that back line out, all right, like that. Just kind of remove it, let it dry, and I'm just going to go ahead and get started with the rest of the work. So I'm working with a pretty small brush, and I'm just going to start building up the structure and the detail and all the contrast and just all the complexities that go into the rest of the painting. So, and hopefully do it with some flair. In theory, we're always shooting for flair. All right, so Alright, so we have sped up the action in this video again so we can get through it in a reasonable amount of time. I've mentioned in Talking Watercolor that I intended for this to be a faster tutorial, but I'm a bit out of practice with faces, and this one took longer than I expected. I was checking for a wet spot there. I got a spot up in the upper left of her forehead that's really wet. I'm waiting for it to dry. So I'm just bouncing around and really starting to add the structure. This is stage 3, and we're going to work with all the fussy little things that really start making this piece pop. All the drawing with the line work, finding that really sharp contrast, defining edges even better. Working on those eyes again. I haven't gone back to fix that one eye that I had picked out the color so I could rebuild it. So it's dry. I should be going after it here in a second. Working on the eyebrows, that separation upper lip, lower lip. I had some really nice color interactions and shapes in the hair that I really like. It's looking really nice. I opened up that eye a little bit, getting a shadow. That left eye has a lot of deep shadows. And now really starting to work up the structure and the detail, the contrast onto the hair, mixing up a larger puddle of pigment to work with. And just adding in the locks, working directional marks, trying to protect highlights and some of that underpainting, trying to give that top of the head a little more form. Pulling it out on her forehead, on the side of her head. And we're going to have all the contrast added in here in a few seconds. And we'll be able to go after highlights and rebuild highlights, catch the highlights with some Pro White. Alright, I'm adding a fairly serious thick structure of some green on the eyes, and now intensifying that hair, the color of the hair with that orange. Throwing a little bit of the stray hairs into the negative space. And again, this is almost going back to layer or stage 2, where we were really working more saturation, but now that I've had more of the contrast into it, I can get a few more glazes, intensify the color. And some more of those hair strands, a darker, thicker mixture. I'm working with that liner brush, so I can get really fine, wispy looking hair with that brush. Dark color in that brush. And a damp brush, no pigment, and I'm just picking, and I'm going to bounce around and look for highlights, pick out those highlights, soften edges, lift color. So it's a process. You add color in, glaze it in, lift it out. And this is definitely a throwback to my gouache wash and pick out technique. So just laying down a big mid-tone range of color and then coming in and finding the highlights and pulling it up. And that's really what starts building the structure of the face and makes it look believable. And if the picking isn't enough, that's where you can come in with the Pro White and really start recapturing highlights. Working on just the spots on the forehead, on the brow, down on the chin, on that highlighted side. The right side is a darker side than the left. There we go, getting that highlight right up there on that forehead. And then that's just damp. That's just a damp brush. No pigment whatsoever. Pigment's already on the paper. Yeah, it's looking good. So this is really the part that takes so long. And that's why I did not want this to run for a whole hour and 10 minutes. And I'm picking a little bit of highlight in the eye just to lighten it up. Let that green show through a little better. Remove some of the black. And now I'm coming back in with some very seriously thick and dark color for contrast, adding in the eyelashes, the deepest recesses on the face, building that up. A little more darkness there on that left side in the hair. A little more definition on that forehead. A little more on that chin, that little divot right under the lip, right above the chin. Just is a little darker right there. Fixing a problem right there. And yes, still a little more saturation, denser contrast. And working hair. Checking, make sure it's dry. And I'm going to come in with some cyan, mixture of cyan, pretty much just a very thin diluted mixture of cyan for that shadow side to cool it down. You have to be real careful doing this because if you keep working it, you'll reactivate the colors underneath and then you'll start creating mud. So this is a tricky process, but it pays off. Should look pretty good once it's finished. And again, it will dry lighter than what you expect. And now I broke out the Pro White and I'm putting some highlights in around on the face, the really hottest highlights, upper lip, on the crown of the nose there. There's a nice highlight right on the lower lip, and then some highlights on the cracks on the lip, the underneath side of the nose, underneath side of the chin, side of the face. Yeah, so I'm just going to bounce around and pop in all those highlights. So I am approaching the end of this, but even in real time, the end of it. Just looking around for all those subtle little spots to work on. I've got work to do in the hair yet, and it's coming together. All right, here we go. I'm going to dry brush some of those hair strands in, the highlights on the hair. I'm working with that #1 round. I don't have the liner out yet, so And really popping those highlights in the shadow side even, where the color is a little more saturated. It really does make it pop. So directional mark making, I'm just drawing right now. Drawing in those highlights. as fast as I can. And it's coming together. It's looking good. A little more of that purpley blue. It's a little darker blue this time. Mixing up some magenta and popping it. I'm using that magenta as kind of a transition from the from that orange into that blue. I'm getting a little more of that. Oh, I'm getting a thick mixture of that green for just a few touches on the outer rim of the eyes, which will really make that green pop up. A little dry brush on the highlight side of the head. That was a big boo-boo, so now I'm saying, uh-oh, I messed up. I'm going to fix that. We'll just take it back to a base color, let it dry, and we'll come after it again in just a few minutes. All right, still working highlights, defining that nose, some of those edges on the chin. There's a lot more detail I could be doing on the lower portion, shoulders, and on that tank top that she's wearing, but I really want the focus to be on the face, so I'm going to keep that fairly less defined than the face and the portrait. So I was just checking my wet spot up there. I think, yep, I'm ready to go after it again. So I'm going to mix up some of those dark saturated colors, fix that spot right up there. Again, if don't feel bad if it never goes exactly as planned. So you just have to kind of roll with the punches, realize when something isn't working right, just be willing to tear it down and go back to square one and give it a second go. So it's just the practice of refining your technique and knowing when you have to do those things to it. And our last touch is a little more, a few more on the eye. There's some really hot spots in the eye right in there. That's that wet spot that I had messed up. So this piece is coming to a close. Like I said, it took a lot longer than I anticipated. And now I'm throwing a little more darker colors in here for freckles. So all right, well, that's it. This video took way longer than I expected, so you've probably just watched it in a sped up format, but definitely shows you the process of working with just the primary colors, CMYK, and getting a face to come up from a sketch using those basic colors with all the structure and the detail, the stages and all of that. So this definitely isn't a beginner tutorial. It's definitely an intermediate. I've had some people commenting about needing some intermediate tutorials. So this takes a lot of work, a lot of practice. I'm a bit out of practice, so I am kind of rusty, no pun intended. So anyway, if you got any value out of this tutorial, please give me a like and a subscribe. Head over to my Patreon channel and give me a $5 a month membership if you think what I'm doing here on this channel is worth that effort and that financial commitment. But if you do, I do appreciate it. So head over to my video descriptions and I have all sorts of links, supplies, downloads, and everything in there. And I'll see you in the next tutorial.